In this video, I want to talk about the art of attention. As one said that attention creates our reality, and you might have felt that a little bit lately um, in terms of distracting thoughts. And William James said over 100 years ago that the mark of an excellent education system is how much it focuses on training our attentional systems. And it'd be interesting if you can recall even a single class you had in high school or college where this was true. And this is getting a little bit better. We have some classes on attention in terms of meditation and mindfulness, but largely attention is still something that most of us in the West ignore. And all this came, well, to my attention in class the other day. I was discussing art in general, and I was asking about the word origins of art and maybe having a senior moment or something. I just went blank, and the student reminded me that the word art simply refers to one who is very skillful or the act of being skillful at something. And this led into a discussion then in the art of motorcycle maintenance. And of course, the whole point was being skillful at motorcycle maintenance. And the author tells a story where he walks into a shop in the 70s, and it was sort of irritating that they had music on because then they're paying attention to the music and they're not actually being skillful in terms of the motorcycle maintenance. And so, in terms of attention, let's start off with a study. I'll put the link in the description by Steve Yantis, who used to be at Johns Hopkins. And I think the study really went unrecognized for um, why I think it's so insightful. And the study itself was kind of simple. People would do a visual or an auditory task while they're having their brain imaged. And so we can replicate this right now. So let's imagine I was going to tell you the secrets of the universe, but I'm going to whisper these. So right now, if you started to try to listen to what I was saying, you probably shifted all of your attention to the auditory, the hearing parts of the brain. And that's what his study found. Now, instead of whispering you the secrets of the universe, let's imagine I write these out, but it's going to be real small print and I'm just going to flash it on the screen. If I did this, all the attention would shift to the visual parts, the back part of the brain. And so we just changed your brain with this very simple task. And your brain is shifting its attention all of the time. And you say, well, this doesn't feel like it's really me doing it. It feels like it's happening kind of automatically. Well, a lot of that has to do with the nature of how we're defining control and how we're defining our ego. And one of the really surprising meetings happened a while back was between the neuroscientists and the long-term meditators in terms of attention. And so here in the West, we think of attention as being extremely short-lived, outside of our control, and almost virtually impossible to maintain for extended periods. Well, these uh, expert meditators said very confidently, and were able to back it up, that they could sustain attention for hours at a time without any intrusive thoughts. And of course, that's really what anxiety is. You're trying to focus on something, you're trying to do what you're doing, which is a very Zen thing. But then these intrusive thoughts take you away from what you're doing. And the confusing part about this is that sometimes we get the feeling like we are in control of our attention. So if you go to the movies, and maybe it's a long movie, a 3-hour movie, and you can walk away and you can say, wow, I really focused my attention. That movie grabbed my attention for 3 hours. I wasn't even distracted and I had no intrusive thoughts. And a lot of us deal with anxiety by dealing with distractions rather than actually focusing in on our attention. And you can show this because, okay, if you think you're so good at these kind of a sustained attention task, well, just sit in a quiet room and do nothing for a while. And that's when it really becomes apparent. And that's why, again, we engage in distractions. See, a 3-hour movie is kind of easy because if you feed the mind what it desires, the mind is kind of like Veruca. I mean, it just wants what it wants and when it wants it. And so if you feed the mind violence, action, and drama, well, the mind is going to seem very cooperative. But that's not what we're talking about when we talk about attention. When we talk about attention, we're talking about you're in a quiet room, there's nothing to do, and then do you control the focus of what you're attending to. And so one of my favorite practices is a very simple one. I call it just one conscious breath. And the thing about attention is because we have virtually no training, this would be like me asking you to go run a marathon when you haven't even ran around the block once. And it would be impossible. And so instead of asking you to run a marathon, if we're going to start things off, let's just start with a run around the block. And that's what one conscious breath is. That's exactly what it sounds like. So just do one conscious breath. Just in and out. And for that moment, you really did have sustained attention. And that's exactly like running around the block once. And so and you can do that a couple times during the day. Everyone, even our untrained people in terms of attention, can still take one conscious breath. And once you get that down, then you can move on to two. And then you're running 3 times around the block. And then eventually work your way up to the marathon. Now, when you start this, remember to do what in the East is called Wu Wei. So here in the West, we focus on effort and we focus on, and that's the mind. So the mind is forceful. It pushes, it pulls. In the East, the principle of Wu Wei is no effort. And so it's really sidestepping the ego. And so when you did that one conscious breath, really it was effortless. It just happened. And so when you do the practice, and you're trying to force it, you're probably using ego. And so that's not what meditation is about. And when you build the practice up a little bit more, the more, well, let me put it a slightly different way. Why do people meditate after 20 years? These expert meditators, what are they going for? Well, one of the things about meditation is it's who you really are. It's not the ego. And so this attentional system I'm talking about is housed more in the right brain. And I've always put this as kind of the seat of closer to who we really are. And so the reason they maintain a meditative practice is because they're not trying to improve anything. They're just being who they are and true to their own nature. And so when you're working on this, the true self is forgiving and it's gentle and it's patient. And so practicing Wu Wei in terms of meditation is really, well, it's the same thing. It's just wording it slightly differently. And so you're doing one conscious breath. If you mess up, you mess up. And it's the same thing when I do these videos. If you take anything too seriously, that's a left brain activity. So to be artful, to be skillful, is really just a shift. I mean, you already are skillful. It's really just getting in touch with something that you already are. And that's the kind of practice. So let me know what you think. Practice the one conscious breath, and then 2, then 3, and sometime you end up doing that marathon.